The debt collector's boots hit the porch with the kind of rhythm that made hearts stop. And Olivia Harper knew, before she even looked up from her washing, that this was the day everything would change. She had been 22 years old for exactly 3 weeks, and in that time her father had died, the bank had foreclosed on their cattle, and now here came the man in the black coat with papers that would take the last thing she had left in this world. The small homestead outside Johnson City, Texas, where she had spent every day of her life. It was September of 1883, and the heat still clung to the land like a stubborn memory of summer. Olivia straightened from the washboard, wiping her hands on her already damp apron, and watched as the man dismounted from his horse. He was thin and precise in his movements, the kind of man who counted every dollar twice and never forgot a single cent owed. Behind him, the dust settled slowly in the afternoon light. "Miss Harper," he called out, though he had not yet reached the porch steps. His voice carried across the yard with practiced authority. "I am Mr. Cornelius Finch, representing the Johnson City Bank and Trust. I believe you know why I am here." Olivia did know. She had known for weeks, ever since the lawyer had read out her father's debts in that stifling office above the general store. Thomas Harper had been a good man but a poor businessman, and the drought of the previous 2 summers had broken him in ways that went deeper than money. When the fever took him in August, it had almost seemed like a mercy. Almost. "I know," she said quietly, stepping down from the porch. The sun beat against her shoulders through the thin fabric of her work dress. "But I do not have the money yet. I need more time." Mr. Finch reached the bottom of the steps and removed his hat with exaggerated courtesy. "I am afraid time is precisely what you do not have, Miss Harper. The debt is $372. It was due in full 2 weeks ago." He produced a leather folder from inside his coat. "I have here the papers for seizure of property. You have until sundown to vacate the premises. $372. It might as well have been $372,000. Olivia had $23 hidden in a coffee tin in the kitchen, money she had earned taking in mending and laundry from the women in town. It was not even close to enough. "Please," she heard herself say, and hated the weakness in her own voice. "This is my home. My mother is buried here. My father built this house with his own hands." "That is very touching," Mr. Finch said without a trace of emotion. "But debts must be paid, Miss Harper. The bank has been more than patient." She was opening her mouth to argue, to plead, to do something even though she knew it would be useless, when she heard the sound of another horse approaching. Both she and the debt collector turned to look down the long drive that connected the property to the main road into Johnson City. The rider was tall in the saddle, and even from a distance, Olivia could see the easy confidence in the way he sat his horse. He wore a wide-brimmed hat pulled low against the sun, and as he drew closer, she recognized him. Barrett Kane. Everyone in Johnson City knew Barrett Kane. He was a cowboy in the truest sense of the word, a man who had spent the last 8 years working cattle drives up and down Texas and into Kansas. He was 26 years old and had a reputation for being honest, hard-working, and absolutely fearless when it came to handling horses or men. He had grown up on a ranch 20 miles outside of town, but his parents had died in a wagon accident when he was 17, and he had been on his own ever since. Olivia had seen him around Johnson City over the years, though they had never spoken more than a few words. He was the kind of man women noticed, with dark hair that touched his collar and eyes the color of creek water in summer. But more than his looks, there was something in the way he carried himself that drew attention, a quiet strength that needed no announcement. Barrett brought his horse to a stop near Mr. Finch's mount and swung down from the saddle in one smooth motion. "Afternoon," he said, touching the brim of his hat to Olivia. Then his gaze moved to the debt collector. "Mr. Finch, surprised to see you out this way. Mr. Kane." Finch's tone went slightly cooler. "This is bank business. It does not concern you." "Well now, I happened to be riding past and I saw you here," Barrett said easily. "And I know Miss Harper lost her father not long ago. Seemed like maybe she could use someone to stand with her. That is all." Mr. Finch's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "As I said, this is a private matter. Miss Harper owes the bank a substantial sum. I am here to collect." "How substantial?" Barrett asked. $372, Olivia said before the debt collector could respond. Her voice was steadier now, though she was not sure why. Perhaps it was simply having another person there, someone who was not looking at her with Mr. Finch's cold calculation. "It was my father's debt. Medical bills and a loan he took out 2 years ago when the drought hit." Barrett nodded slowly. He looked at the house, at the small barn and the chicken coop, at the vegetable garden Olivia had been trying to keep alive despite the lack of rain. Then he looked at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "That is a heavy load to carry alone," he said quietly. "She will not be carrying it at all," Mr. Finch interjected. "She will be leaving this property by sundown, unless, of course, she can produce the full amount owed." He said this last part with the smug certainty of a man who knows he holds all the cards. Barrett was quiet for a long moment. Olivia saw his jaw work as if he was considering something. Then he turned fully to face the debt collector. "I will pay it," he said. The words fell into the hot afternoon air like stones into still water. Olivia stared at him, unable to process what she had just heard. Mr. Finch looked equally surprised, though he recovered quickly. "You will pay Miss Harper's debt?" he asked, suspicion sharpening his tone. "That is what I said." Barrett's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. $372, I will pay it in full." "Barrett, you cannot," Olivia managed to say, finding her voice at last. "That is too much. I cannot ask you to do that." He looked at her then, and there was something in his eyes that made her forget for a moment that they were virtual strangers. "You are not asking," he said. "I am offering." "But why?" The question came out almost as a whisper. Barrett held her gaze. "Because it is the right thing to do. And because no one should lose their home when someone can help prevent it." Mr. Finch cleared his throat loudly. "This is highly irregular. I will need to see proof that you have the funds, Mr. Kane." "I have it," Barrett said flatly. "I have been saving for 8 years. I can ride into town right now and get you the cash from the bank. Or I can write a draft that your bank will honor." The debt collector's thin face worked through several expressions, clearly unhappy at being denied his collection, but equally unable to refuse payment from any legitimate source. "A bank draft will be acceptable," he said at last, his voice clipped. "But the debt must be paid in full before I leave this property." "That is fine," Barrett said. He moved to his saddlebag and pulled out a small leather journal and a pencil. Olivia watched in stunned silence as he wrote out the draft with careful, precise letters. When he finished, he tore the page free and handed it to Mr. Finch. The debt collector examined it closely, holding it up to the light as if searching for some flaw. Finally, he folded it and placed it in his leather folder with the other papers. "This appears to be in order," he admitted grudgingly. "I will process this payment at the bank. The debt will be considered satisfied." "Good," Barrett said. "Then you can be on your way." Mr. Finch's mouth pressed into a thin line. He looked at Olivia. "You are very fortunate, Miss Harper, very fortunate indeed." He put his hat back on and moved to his horse. "I will send confirmation of the payment satisfaction within the week." They watched in silence as he mounted and rode away, his horse kicking up small clouds of dust that hung in the still air. Olivia stood rooted to the spot, her mind racing. When the debt collector had disappeared from view, she finally turned to Barrett. "I do not understand," she said. "Why would you do this? You do not even know me." Barrett removed his hat and ran a hand through his dark hair. In the afternoon light, she could see the tan lines on his forehead, the evidence of long days under the sun. "I know you are Thomas Harper's daughter," he said. "I knew your father a little. He helped me once when I was just starting out, gave me work for a few weeks when I needed it badly. I never forgot that." "But $372, Olivia pressed. "That is years of work, your savings." "It was my savings," he agreed. "I was planning to buy some land, start my own small ranch, but that can wait." He met her eyes. "Your need was more immediate." Olivia felt something tighten in her chest, a complicated knot of gratitude and shame and something else she could not quite name. "I will pay you back," she said firmly. "Every cent, I swear it, I will find a way." Barrett shook his head. "We can talk about that later. Right now you should probably sit down, you look a little pale." She realized he was right. Her legs felt unsteady beneath her, and there was a ringing in her ears that had nothing to do with the cicadas singing in the mesquite trees. Barrett took her elbow gently and guided her up the porch steps to the old bench her father had made. She sank down onto it gratefully. "I will get you some water," Barrett said, but she caught his wrist. "Wait, please." She looked up at him. "I do not know how to thank you. I do not even know what to say." "You do not have to say anything," he told her. His hand was warm where she was touching his wrist, and she became suddenly aware of the contact and pulled away. He did not seem to notice. "I should get going. I am sure you have a lot to think about. Will you stay for supper at least?" The words came out before she had really thought them through, but as soon as she said them, she knew she meant it. "Please, it is the least I can do." Barrett hesitated. She could see him weighing it, the same careful consideration he had shown before offering to pay her debt. "I would not want to impose," he said finally. "You would not be imposing, I insist." Olivia stood up, feeling more steady now. "I have stew from yesterday I can heat up and fresh bread. It is not fancy, but it is good." "Stew and bread sounds like a feast," Barrett said, and there was the ghost of a smile at the corner of his mouth. "All right, thank you." She led him inside the small house, suddenly acutely aware of how humble it must seem. The front room served as kitchen and living area both, with a cast iron stove in one corner and a rough wooden table in the center. Her bedroom was through a door to the left, barely big enough for a bed and a chest of drawers. Everything was clean but worn, the floor swept but scuffed by decades of use. If Barrett noticed the poverty of the place, he did not show it. He hung his hat on a peg by the door and stood politely as she bustled about, stoking the fire in the stove and pulling out the pot of stew she had made the day before. She sliced bread and set out 2 plates, acutely conscious of his presence in the small space. "You can sit," she said, gesturing to the table. "It will just take a few minutes to heat." Barrett sat, stretching his long legs out in front of him. "You have a good place here," he said, looking around. "Your father did fine work." "He did," Olivia agreed. She stirred the stew, watching the chunks of potato and carrot tumble through the thickening broth. He was not much for ranching, as it turned out, but he was good with his hands. He built almost everything here himself. She paused. "I suppose you must think he was foolish to get himself so deep in debt." "I think he was unlucky," Barrett said quietly. "Drought hits everyone hard, and sickness does not care how careful a man is with his money. There is no shame in it." Olivia blinked hard against the sudden sting of tears. She had not cried at her father's funeral, had not allowed herself to cry through any of the weeks that followed. There had been too much to do, too many decisions to make. But something about Barrett's words, the simple kindness in them, made her defenses crack just a little. "Thank you for saying that," she managed. She ladled stew into the bowls and brought them to the table, then returned for the bread. When she sat down across from him, she found him watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "You have been managing this place all on your own?" he asked. "Yes. There is not much to manage anymore. The cattle were sold off to pay some of the debts. I have the chickens and the garden, and I take in work from town when I can get it." She broke off a piece of bread. "It has been enough to feed me, at least." "That is not much of a life for someone your age," Barrett observed. "You should not have to carry all this alone." "I do not have much choice," Olivia said, more sharply than she intended. Then softer, "I am sorry. I did not mean to sound ungrateful. I am grateful, truly. You saved my home today." "You saved everything." "I just did what any decent person should do," Barrett said. He ate a spoonful of the stew and nodded appreciatively. "This is good, really good." They ate in silence for a few minutes. Olivia found herself watching him from under her lashes, taking in details she had not noticed before. The way his hands moved with the same easy competence he showed in everything else. The faint scar along his jawline. The way his shoulders filled out his work shirt, broad from years of hard labor. "Where are you living now?" she asked, partly to break the silence and partly because she realized she did not actually know. "Are you still working the cattle drives?" "I just got back from a drive to Kansas 2 weeks ago," he said. "Right now I am staying at the boarding house in town while I figure out my next move. I was planning to look at some land parcels, but—" He trailed off with a slight shrug. "But now your money is tied up in my debt," Olivia finished. The guilt sat heavy in her stomach. "Barrett, truly I will find a way to pay you back. I will work every day." "I will, stop," he said gently. "We will figure something out, but you do not have to have all the answers right this minute. Let yourself breathe first." She wanted to argue, but the exhaustion of the day was catching up with her. She had been running on fear and desperation for so long that now, with the immediate crisis past, she felt hollowed out. "I do not know what I would have done if you had not come along," she admitted. "I think I would be packing my things right now, with nowhere to go." "Do you have family anywhere? Anyone who could help?" "No. My mother was an only child and she died when I was 12. My father had a brother, but they had a falling out years ago. I have not seen my uncle since I was small." She pushed her half-finished stew around her bowl. "There is no one." The words hung in the air between them. Outside, the sun was beginning its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber. The heat of the day was finally starting to break. Barrett finished his meal and leaned back in his chair. "I have a proposition," he said after a moment, "if you want to hear it." Olivia looked up. "A proposition? I need work," he said, "and you need help around this place. I can see from outside that there is plenty that needs doing. The barn needs repairs, and that fence line looks like it is barely standing. The well pump was making a sound when I watered my horse that suggests it needs maintenance." He met her eyes. "Let me work here for a while. I will do the repairs and help you get the place properly running again. You can pay me in room and board. It will give you time to build up some savings, and it will give me something to do while I figure out my next steps." Olivia stared at him. "You want to work here, for room and board. That is what I am offering. But that is not fair to you. Room and board is not enough for the kind of work you are talking about. And besides, I cannot have a man living here with me. People would talk." "People always talk," Barrett said with a slight smile. "But I was thinking I could stay in the barn. There is a loft up there that would suit me fine. As for fare, you are forgetting that you owe me $372. Think of this as you working off that debt. The labor I do here offsets what you owe me. We can call it even after, say, 6 months. 6 months. Half a year with Barrett Kane living on her property, working alongside her. The thought was both alarming and strangely appealing. She tried to think it through rationally. He was right that she needed help desperately. The place was falling apart around her, and there were tasks she simply could not do alone. Having someone here, especially someone as capable as Barrett, would make an enormous difference. But having a man living here, even in the barn, would cause talk in town. Johnson City was not a large place, and gossip spread faster than wildfire. She was already in a vulnerable position as a young, unmarried woman living alone. Adding Barrett to the situation would only give people more to whisper about. On the other hand, she thought with a flicker of defiance, what choice did she really have? She could refuse his help and struggle on alone, probably failing within a few months anyway. Or she could accept his offer and actually have a chance at making the homestead work. The debt would still be there otherwise, hanging over her head. 6 months, she said slowly, and then we are even. You do not owe me anything more, and I do not owe you anything more. That is the deal. You are certain you want to do this. It is a lot of hard work for not much reward. Barrett stood and carried his bowl to the wash basin. I am certain. Besides, I like hard work, and I like the idea of building something up instead of just drifting from one cattle drive to another. He turned to face her. Unless you would rather I did not stay. I will not push if you are uncomfortable with it. Olivia stood as well. She looked at this man who had walked into her life just an hour ago and changed everything. There was something steady about him, something that made her feel like maybe she could trust him. It was a feeling she had not had in a long time. I would like you to stay, she said, and I am grateful for the help, truly. Then it is settled. Barrett picked up his hat. I will go get my things from town and be back before dark. If you want to show me the barn, I can take a look at what I am working with. She led him outside and across the yard to the barn. It was a simple structure, weathered but solid, with 2 stalls for horses on the ground level and a loft above for hay storage. Barrett climbed the ladder and looked around the loft, nodding to himself. This will do fine, he called down. Better than the boarding house, honestly. At least here I will not have Mrs. Chen banging on my door at dawn demanding I come down for breakfast. Olivia laughed, surprised by the sound. She could not remember the last time she had laughed. Mrs. Chen is rather particular about meal times. That is one way to put it. Barrett climbed back down. All right. I will be back in a few hours. Do not worry about supper for me. I will grab something in town. She walked him to his horse and watched as he swung up into the saddle. Barrett, she said, and he looked down at her. Thank you for everything. I know I keep saying it, but I mean it. I know you do, he said. Then, with a touch to his hat brim, he turned his horse and rode off down the drive. Olivia stood watching until he disappeared from sight. Then she walked slowly back to the house, her mind spinning with everything that had happened. This morning she had woken up expecting to lose everything. Now, impossibly, she still had her home. And she had a partner, at least temporarily, in keeping it. She spent the remaining hours of daylight doing her evening chores, feeding the chickens and checking her garden. The tomatoes were finally starting to ripen, and she picked a few to put aside for dinner the next day. She pulled some weeds and watered what she could with the limited water from the well, making a mental note to ask Barrett to look at that pump as soon as possible. True to his word, Barrett returned just as the sun was setting. He had a bedroll and saddlebags, along with a few other items tied to his horse. Olivia helped him carry things to the barn, though he insisted on doing most of the lifting. I will get the loft set up tonight, he said, and tomorrow I will start looking at what needs doing around here. If you have a list of priorities, that would help. I can make a list, Olivia said, though I am afraid it might be rather long. That is all right, gives me plenty to keep busy with. They stood in the barn doorway, the evening shadows long around them, Somewhere in the distance a coyote called, and the chickens in their coop made soft, settling sounds. "Will you be all right out here?" Olivia asked. "I have extra blankets if you need them." "I will be fine," Barrett assured her. "I have slept in worse places than this. You go on and get your rest." "I am sure today took a lot out of you." She wanted to say something more, but the words would not come. Instead, she just nodded and headed back to the house. Once inside, she lit a lamp and sat down at the table with a piece of paper and pencil. She started making the list Barrett had asked for, but after a few minutes, she found herself just staring at the paper, not really seeing it. Everything had changed so fast. This morning she had been alone and desperate. Tonight she had hope again, and she had Barrett Kane sleeping in her barn. It seemed impossible, like something from a story rather than real life. She did not know what to make of him. He seemed genuine in his desire to help, but a small, cynical voice in her head whispered that no one did something like this without expecting something in return. Men did not just hand over their life savings to women they barely knew, did not offer to work for months for nothing more than meals and a place to sleep. But then she thought of the way he had looked at her, the quiet steadiness in his eyes, and the cynical voice grew quieter. Maybe there were still good people in the world. Maybe Barrett Kane was one of them. She finished her list and got ready for bed. As she lay in the darkness, listening to the familiar sounds of the house settling around her, she thought about the 6 months ahead. So much could happen in 6 months. So much could change. She fell asleep with her window open to catch the evening breeze, and in the barn across the yard, Barrett Kane lay in the loft looking up at the stars through gaps in the roof and thinking very similar thoughts. Morning came early, as it always did on a working homestead. Olivia was up with the first light, stoking the fire and putting coffee on to boil. She mixed up biscuit dough and set it to baking, then went out to gather eggs from the chickens. The morning air was cool and sweet, not yet touched by the heat that would come later. She was surprised to find Barrett already up and working. He had his shirt off and was examining the barn door, which had been hanging crooked on its hinges for months. His back was broad and tanned, muscles moving under skin as he tested the door frame. "Good morning," she called, trying not to stare. "I did not expect you to be up so early." He turned, and she saw him register her presence before reaching for his shirt and pulling it on. "Old habits from the trail," he said. "Once you get used to waking before dawn, it sticks with you." He gestured at the door. "This whole frame is loose. I will need to reinforce it before I can fix the door itself." "I have some lumber stored behind the barn," Olivia said. "My father bought it last year for repairs he never got around to making. That will help. I will take a look after breakfast. Speaking of which, I have coffee and biscuits if you want to come up to the house." They walked back together, and Olivia became aware of his height next to her. The way his stride was longer than hers, so he had to adjust his pace to match. Inside, she poured coffee and served the biscuits with butter and jam she had made from wild plums earlier in the summer. "These are excellent," Barrett said after his first bite. "You are a good cook." "My mother taught me before she died. Cooking was one of the things we did together." Olivia wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "I have that list you asked for. I tried to put things in order of importance, but honestly, most of it is fairly urgent. Let me see it." She handed over the paper and watched as he read through her careful notes. His expression did not change much, though his eyebrows went up slightly at one point. "This is comprehensive," he said when he finished. "You were not exaggerating about the fence line, and I saw what you mean about the well pump. That should probably be the first priority, since you need water for everything else." "That is what I thought too." "I will ride into town this morning and pick up some supplies," Barrett said. "I saw the general store had pump parts last time I was there." Is there anything else you need from town? Olivia hesitated. I could use flour and sugar if you are going anyway, and maybe salt, but I can pay for those myself. I have a little money set aside. You keep your money, Barrett said firmly. Consider supplies part of the deal. You are feeding me, after all. It is only fair I contribute to the groceries. She wanted to argue, but the truth was that flour and sugar would stretch her limited funds significantly. Thank you, she said instead. Again. You do not have to keep thanking me, he said with a slight smile. We are partners now, remember. Partners help each other out. Partners. The word settled into her chest with unexpected warmth. When was the last time she had felt like she had a partner in anything? Her father had loved her, but in his last years he had been more of a burden than a help, lost in his own despair over the failing ranch. Before that, she had been too young to be much use. She had been on her own, truly on her own, for longer than she cared to admit. Barrett left for town after breakfast, and Olivia threw herself into her own work. She had mending to finish for Mrs. Patterson, who ran the boarding house, and she needed to get it done before the weekend. She sat on the porch with her sewing basket and worked through the pile of torn shirts and worn trousers, her needle flashing in the morning light. He returned around midday with a loaded wagon he had apparently borrowed from the livery stable. Olivia came down from the porch to help him unload, and her eyes widened at the quantity of supplies. "Barrett, this is too much," she protested, seeing not just the flour and sugar she had mentioned, but also coffee, dried beans, cornmeal, and various tools and hardware. "It is what we need to do the work properly," he said, handing down a heavy sack of flour. "No point in doing a job halfway." She wanted to argue, but he was already moving on to the next item, clearly considering the matter closed. Instead, she helped him carry everything inside or to the barn, depending on what it was. When they finished, Barrett wiped his forehead with his sleeve and looked at the well. "I am going to tackle that pump now while the day is still relatively cool," he said. "It might take me a few hours." "I will bring you water," Olivia said, "and dinner will be ready around 6 if that suits you." "That suits me fine." She watched him walk to the well and begin examining the pump mechanism, then returned to her mending, but she found it hard to concentrate on her stitching. Her eyes kept drifting to the well, where Barrett had disassembled the pump and was carefully inspecting each component. There was something mesmerizing about watching someone who truly knew what they were doing. Every movement was purposeful, efficient, without wasted motion. The afternoon wore on. Olivia finished the mending and started preparing dinner, a simple meal of beans and cornbread with some of the tomatoes from her garden. She made extra, knowing Barrett would be hungry after working in the heat all day. She also made fresh lemonade from lemons he had brought back from town, a small luxury she had not had in months. When she called him in for dinner, he came looking tired but satisfied. "Got the pump working properly," he reported, washing his hands in the basin by the door. "It should give you better water pressure now, and it will not make that grinding sound anymore." "That is wonderful," Olivia said, meaning it. The pump had been worrying her for weeks. "You did all that in one afternoon. The parts were not as worn as I thought they would be." Mostly it just needed cleaning and oiling. He sat down at the table and looked at the meal she had laid out. "This looks great, thank you." They ate together, falling into an easy conversation about the work that needed doing next. Barrett thought they should tackle the fence line next, since it would keep any livestock she might acquire in the future safely contained. Olivia agreed, though she pointed out that livestock was a distant dream at the moment. "Maybe not as distant as you think," Barrett said. "I know a man up near San Antonio who has some good breeding cattle. If we can get this place in solid shape, you could start building a herd again. Small at first, but it would grow." That would require money I do not have, Olivia reminded him. It would require some money, Barrett agreed. But not as much as you might think. And 6 months is a long time. A lot can change. She wanted to believe him, wanted to let herself hope that the future might hold more than just scraping by. But hope was dangerous. It made you vulnerable. She had learned that lesson well enough over the past months. As if reading her thoughts, Barrett set down his fork and looked at her seriously. I know it is hard to see past the current situation, he said, but you have something valuable here. Good land, a solid house, water. With some work, this could be a real going concern. You just need time and help to get it there. And you think you can provide that in 6 months? I think we can, he corrected. Both of us working together. Yes, I do. Olivia held his gaze, searching for doubt or false optimism and finding neither. He really believed what he was saying, and maybe, just maybe, she could believe it too. All right, she said softly. Let us see what we can do in 6 months. Barrett smiled, a real smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. That is the spirit. After dinner, they sat on the porch for a while as the evening cooled down. Barrett smoked a cigarette and Olivia worked on some embroidery, a piece she was doing for herself rather than for money. They did not talk much, but the silence was comfortable rather than awkward. In the distance, the sun set in a blaze of orange and purple, painting the Texas landscape in shades of fire. I should turn in, Barrett said eventually, stubbing out his cigarette. Want to get an early start on that fence tomorrow. Good night, Olivia said, and Barrett, thank you for today, for all of it. He paused at the steps. You are welcome, Olivia. Sleep well. She watched him walk across the yard to the barn, his tall figure silhouetted against the darkening sky. Then she went inside and got ready for bed, her mind full of thoughts she could not quite organize into coherent patterns. As she drifted off to sleep, she found herself thinking that maybe, just maybe, things were going to be all right after all. The days began to settle into a rhythm after that. Barrett would be up before dawn, working on whatever project was most urgent. Olivia would make breakfast for both of them, then spend her mornings doing her own chores and whatever work she had taken in from town. They would eat dinner together, often on the porch where it was cooler, and talk about the progress being made on the property. Within a week, Barrett had repaired the barn door and started on the fence line. Olivia helped when she could, holding posts steady while he hammered them in or handing him tools when he needed them. She found she enjoyed the physical work, the satisfaction of seeing tangible progress at the end of each day. She also found herself enjoying Barrett's company more than she had expected. He was easy to be around, not demanding conversation but willing to engage when she wanted to talk. He had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard sometimes, making her laugh at unexpected moments. And he was unfailingly respectful, never presuming on their arrangement or making her feel uncomfortable. Still, she was aware of the way people in town looked at them when they went in for supplies together. The whispers that followed them down the street. Mrs. Patterson, when Olivia returned her mending, had made several pointed comments about young women needing to be careful of their reputations. People will talk no matter what you do, Barrett said when she mentioned it to him one evening. You can either live your life worried about gossip or you can live it on your own terms. I know which one I would choose. Easy for you to say, Olivia replied. You are a man. The rules are different for women. That is true, he acknowledged, and it is not fair. But I will tell you what I told Mrs. Patterson when she cornered me at the general store yesterday. I am working for you as a hired hand, nothing more and nothing less. Anyone who wants to make it into something scandalous is showing more about their own mind than about our situation. You talked to Mrs. Patterson. She felt the need to share her opinions on appropriate behavior, Barrett said dryly. I felt the need to tell her to mind her own business, politely, of course. Olivia could not help but smile at the image. I am sure she took that well. About as well as you would expect. He took a sip of his coffee. Point is, you have nothing to be ashamed of. You are working hard to save your home and I am helping. That is all anyone needs to know. His words helped, but Olivia could not shake the awareness that their situation was unconventional at best. She tried not to think about it too much, focusing instead on the work at hand. The homestead was slowly transforming under Barrett's skilled hands. The fences were strong and straight. The barn was weather-tight. Even the house was starting to look better, with shutters that actually closed properly and a roof that no longer leaked in the corner of her bedroom. It was during the third week of their arrangement that things began to shift in a way Olivia had not anticipated. She was working in the garden one afternoon, trying to coax a few more vegetables out of the drought-stressed soil, when Barrett came around the corner of the house. She looked up and found him watching her with an expression she had not seen before. "What is it?" she asked, brushing dirt from her hands. "Is something wrong?" "No, nothing is wrong." He seemed to shake himself slightly. "I was just thinking that you have been working out here all afternoon in this heat. You should take a break." "I am almost finished," Olivia said. "Just a few more plants to water." "Let me help then." He grabbed the second water bucket and began pouring carefully around the base of the tomato plants. They worked in silence for a few minutes, and Olivia was acutely aware of his presence beside her, the way his shadow fell across the garden rows. When they finished, Barrett straightened and looked out across the property. "You have done a good job keeping this garden alive despite everything," he said. "That takes dedication." "It would have died without the vegetables," Olivia said. "Desperation is a strong motivator." "I think it is more than desperation. You care about this place. You put your heart into it." There was something in his tone that made her look at him more carefully. He was still gazing out at the land, but there was a softness in his expression that surprised her. "My father used to say that land will give back what you put into it," she said quietly. "He was not always right about things, but I think he was right about that." "He was right." Barrett turned to face her. "You know, when I first offered to help you, I thought it would be a straightforward arrangement. I would do some work, pay off the debt I created, and move on. But being here, working with you, it has made me realize something." "What is that?" Olivia's heart was beating faster, though she could not have said exactly why. "That I do not want to move on, not after 6 months, not after a year, maybe not ever." He took a step closer. "Olivia, I know this is probably not the right time to say this, and I know we agreed this was just a business arrangement, but I would not be honest if I did not tell you that my feelings have become more complicated than that." She stared at him, unable to form words. The afternoon sun beat down on them both, and somewhere nearby a mockingbird was singing its endless variations, but all she could focus on was Barrett standing in front of her with his heart in his eyes. "I am not asking for anything," he continued. "I just wanted you to know. I have come to care for you more than I planned, more than I probably should have let myself. And if that makes things difficult, I understand. I will still honor our agreement. I will still stay and do the work I promised." But I could not keep pretending that this was just a business arrangement for me anymore. Olivia's mind raced. Part of her wanted to step back, to protect herself from the vulnerability of caring for someone again. But another part, a part that was growing stronger by the second, wanted to step forward, to admit that she had been feeling the same pull, the same impossible hope. "Barrett," she said, and her voice came out softer than she intended. "I do not know what to say." "You do not have to say anything right now," he assured her quickly. "I just wanted to be honest with you, that is all. but Olivia was shaking her head. No, you do not understand. I do not know what to say because I have been trying not to feel the same way. She met his eyes. But I do. Feel the same way, I mean. I just did not think I should. You are here because of an obligation, because you paid my debt. It would not be fair to you if I let myself hope for more than that. Olivia. Barrett reached out and gently took her hand, and the contact sent warmth spreading through her entire body. I paid your debt because it was the right thing to do. I stayed because I wanted to help. But I am standing here telling you this now because somewhere along the way, this stopped being about obligation or helping. It became about you. About us, maybe. Us, she repeated, testing the word. It felt both frightening and wonderful. Only if you want there to be an us, Barrett said. I am not presuming anything. But if you feel even a fraction of what I feel, then I think we owe it to ourselves to see where this might go. Olivia looked down at their joined hands, his calloused and sun-darkened, her smaller but equally work-worn. They were hands that knew labor, that knew struggle, but maybe they could also know gentleness and care and love. I am afraid, she admitted quietly. I have lost so much already. My mother, my father, nearly my home. I do not know if I can survive losing anything else. I cannot promise you that there will not be loss, Barrett said. Life does not work that way, but I can promise you that I will not leave willingly. And I can promise you that whatever comes, we will face it together if you will let me stand beside you. She looked up at him then, really looked at him. This man who had come into her life like an answer to a prayer she had not quite known how to pray. This man who had given her back her home and was now offering her his heart. Yes, she said, so quietly it was almost a whisper. Yes, I want there to be an us. Barrett's face transformed with a smile that made her breath catch. Slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, he raised his free hand to cup her cheek. His thumb brushed along her cheekbone with infinite gentleness. May I kiss you? He asked, and the fact that he asked, that he made sure she wanted this too, made her heart swell even more. Yes, she said again. He leaned down and pressed his lips to hers, soft and sweet and perfect. It was Olivia's first real kiss, and it felt like the world was rearranging itself around them, like everything that had come before was just preparation for this moment. When they finally pulled apart, she was smiling so wide her cheeks hurt. That was nice, she said, then laughed at the understatement. Actually, that was wonderful. It was, Barrett agreed. He looked slightly dazed himself. I have been wanting to do that for weeks. Only weeks. I think I have been wanting it since the day you offered to pay my debt. I just did not realize it yet. They stood there grinning at each other like fools until Barrett laughed and pulled her into a hug. Olivia rested her head against his chest and heard the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear. She wrapped her arms around his waist and let herself feel, for the first time in a long time, safe. We should probably get back to work, Barrett said after a long moment, though he made no move to release her. Probably, Olivia agreed, not moving either. Eventually they did separate, but everything felt different now. The air seemed brighter, the work lighter. They finished the day's chores working side by side, stealing glances at each other when they thought the other was not looking, smiling at nothing. That evening, instead of Barrett going to the barn alone, Olivia walked with him partway across the yard. They stood together in the gathering darkness, and Barrett held her hand like it was something precious. Thank you, Olivia said. For what? For being honest with me. For taking the risk of telling me how you felt. I do not know if I would have been brave enough to say something first. I almost did not, Barrett admitted. I kept telling myself it was too soon, that you might not feel the same way. But then I realized that life is too short to not take chances on the things that matter. And you matter to me, Olivia. More than I can properly say. She squeezed his hand. You matter to me too. So much." They said their good nights reluctantly, and Olivia went back to the house with her heart feeling fuller than it had in years. She lay in bed that night unable to stop smiling, running her fingers over her lips where Barrett had kissed her, marveling at how quickly everything had changed. The next few weeks were some of the happiest of Olivia's life. She and Barrett continued their work on the homestead, but now there was an additional layer of joy to everything they did. They found excuses to touch, to stand close, to steal kisses when they thought no one could see. Barrett started taking his meals at the house rather than in the barn, and they would sit on the porch in the evenings holding hands and talking about everything and nothing. He told her about his childhood on the ranch, about losing his parents and striking out on his own. She told him about her mother's illness, about watching her father slowly give up after his wife died. They shared their fears and hopes, their dreams for the future. "I always wanted to have my own place," Barrett confessed one evening. "Not just for the land or the cattle, but because I wanted to build something that was mine, something that would last." "You are building that here," Olivia said. "With me if you want." "That is all I want," he replied, kissing her forehead. "You and this place and a future we make together." The work on the homestead continued to progress. The fence line was complete, strong and true. The barn and house were both in solid repair. Barrett had even managed to fix the stubborn door on the chicken coop, which had been hanging crooked for as long as Olivia could remember. One day, about 2 months into their arrangement, Barrett came back from town with an unexpected purchase. Olivia heard the lowing before she saw the animals, and she came running from the house to find Barrett leading 3 young cows into the newly repaired corral. "Barrett, what did you do?" she asked, torn between delight and concern. "I bought us some livestock," he said with a grin. "Well, technically I bought them for the homestead. They are good breeding stock. In a year or 2 you will have the start of a real herd." "But the money," Olivia protested, even as she moved closer to admire the cattle. They were beautiful animals, healthy and strong. "I had some saved that I did not use for the debt payment," Barrett said, "and I wanted to invest it in something worthwhile. This place and you, that is worthwhile to me." Olivia turned to him with tears in her eyes. "You did not have to do that." "I know I did not have to, I wanted to." He pulled her close. "Besides, these cows are not charity, they are an investment in our future." "Assuming you still want there to be a future for us." "Of course I do," she said fiercely. "More than anything." As autumn deepened into early winter, the question of what would happen when their 6-month agreement ended loomed larger. Barrett had never mentioned leaving, but Olivia could not shake the worry that he might. After all, their arrangement had been temporary from the start. What if he wanted to move on, to see more of the world? What if he felt trapped by his feelings for her? She tried to push these thoughts away, but they kept creeping back, especially in the quiet moments before sleep. Finally, about 4.5 months into their time together, she worked up the courage to bring it up. They were sitting on the porch after dinner, as had become their custom. The evening was cool enough that Olivia had a shawl wrapped around her shoulders. Barrett had his arm around her, and they were watching the sun set in shades of gold and pink. "Barrett," she said quietly, "can I ask you something? Anything? Our 6 months will be up in about 6 weeks. Have you thought about what happens after that?" She felt him go still beside her. Then he shifted so he could look at her properly. "I have thought about it," he said carefully. "Have you?" "Yes, but I do not know what you want. If you want to stay, or if you feel like you have fulfilled your obligation and it is time to move on." "Olivia, look at me." He cupped her face in his hands. "I have no intention of leaving unless you tell me to go. I thought I had made that clear." "You did, but I worry that you might feel obligated to stay. that you might think I expect it because of everything you have done for me. You think I am here out of obligation." Barrett looked almost hurt. "After everything we have shared, you think I am staying because I feel I have to." "No, I just—" Olivia struggled to find the right words. "I do not want you to wake up one day and resent me because you gave up your dreams to stay here." "My dreams are here," Barrett said firmly. "You are my dream, Olivia. This place that we are building together, that is my dream. I have spent years drifting from one cattle drive to another, never staying anywhere long enough to call it home. But this, with you, this is home. This is what I want, truly," she asked, needing to hear it one more time. "Truly." He kissed her softly. "In fact, I have been trying to figure out the right way to ask you something, and maybe now is as good a time as any." "Ask me what?" Barrett took a deep breath, and she saw nervousness flicker across his face for the first time since she had known him. "Olivia Harper, would you consider marrying me? Not because of the debt or the work or any practical reason, but because I love you and I cannot imagine my life without you in it." Olivia's breath caught in her throat. She had hoped, had let herself dream a little, but hearing the actual words was different. It made everything real in a way it had not been before. "You love me," she whispered. "I love you," he confirmed. "I think I have loved you since the day you stood up to that debt collector with your chin raised and determination in your eyes, even though you were terrified. I have just been waiting for the right moment to tell you." "I love you too," Olivia said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I did not let myself admit it for a long time because I was afraid, but I do. I love you so much it scares me sometimes." "Then marry me," Barrett said. "Let me be your husband and your partner and the person who stands beside you for the rest of our lives. Say yes, Olivia." "Yes," she said through her tears. "Yes, of course I will marry you." Barrett let out a whoop of joy and picked her up, spinning her around right there on the porch. Olivia laughed and clung to him, feeling lighter than air. When he set her down, he kissed her properly, deep and sweet and full of promise. "I do not have a ring yet," he said when they finally broke apart, "but I will get you one, the best one I can afford." "I do not need a ring," Olivia said. "I just need you." "You will have both," Barrett promised. "You will have everything I can give you." They spent the rest of the evening making plans, talking excitedly about when they should have the wedding and who they should invite. They decided on a simple ceremony in Johnson City as soon as they could arrange it with the preacher. Neither of them wanted a long engagement. They had already waited long enough to start their life together properly. The next day, they went into town together to speak with Reverend Miller about scheduling the wedding. The Reverend was a kind man in his 60s who had known Olivia since she was a child. He listened to their request with a warm smile. "I am happy to perform the ceremony," he said. "I will admit I have been wondering when you two would make this official. The whole town has been watching your courtship with great interest." "I am sure they have," Olivia said with a touch of wryness. "I hope most of what they have been saying is kind." "People will gossip," the Reverend said philosophically. "But I have seen enough to know that what you two have is genuine. You have my blessing and my joy." They set the date for 3 weeks later, which would give them time to make preparations without waiting too long. As they left the church, Barrett took Olivia's hand. "3 weeks until you are Mrs. Kane," he said with a grin. "I can hardly wait," Olivia replied, meaning it with her whole heart. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Olivia made herself a simple but lovely wedding dress from fabric Barrett insisted on buying for her. She also made a new shirt for him, embroidering his initials on the cuff with tiny, careful stitches. They cleaned the house from top to bottom and made plans for a small reception with their few close friends. True to his word, Barrett went to the jeweler in Johnson City and purchased a ring. It was a simple gold band with a small pearl set in the center, modest but beautiful. When he showed it to her, Olivia cried and told him it was perfect. The day of the wedding arrived with clear blue skies and unseasonably warm weather for December. Olivia dressed carefully in her new gown, a simple design in soft cream-colored fabric that made her look, she thought when she checked her reflection, almost pretty. She wore her hair up with a few curls framing her face, and she carried a small bouquet of winter greenery and dried flowers. Barrett waited for her at the church dressed in his best clothes, his dark hair neatly combed and his eyes bright with anticipation. When Olivia walked down the aisle on the arm of Mr. Patterson, who had kindly agreed to stand in for her absent father, she saw Barrett's expression transform into something so full of love and wonder that she had to blink back tears. The ceremony itself was simple but heartfelt. They spoke their vows in steady voices, promising to love and honor each other for all their days. When Reverend Miller pronounced them husband and wife, Barrett kissed her with such tenderness that several of the ladies in attendance sniffled into their handkerchiefs. The reception was held at the boarding house, where Mrs. Patterson had prepared a small feast despite her earlier disapproval of their arrangement. She seemed to have softened now that they were properly married, and she fussed over them both like a mother hen. A few of Barrett's friends from his cattle-driving days showed up, rough men who nonetheless showed genuine happiness for the couple. There was music and dancing and laughter, and Olivia felt like she was floating through it all. When they finally left to return to their homestead, newly married and exhausted in the best possible way, Barrett lifted Olivia into the wagon with exaggerated care. "Cannot have my wife walking when I can drive her," he said with a grin. "Your wife," Olivia repeated, savoring the word. "I like the sound of that. So do I, Mrs. Kane, so do I." They drove back through the early evening, and when they reached the homestead, Barrett carried her over the threshold of the house despite her laughing protests. Once inside, he set her down gently and cupped her face in his hands. "I love you," he said seriously, "more than I knew it was possible to love another person, and I promise you I will spend the rest of my life trying to make you happy." "You already make me happy," Olivia said, "every single day." He kissed her then, and the kiss quickly deepened into something more. They made their way to the bedroom together, stumbling slightly in their eagerness. That night they consummated their marriage, and Olivia discovered a whole new way of being close to someone, of showing love through touch and trust and vulnerability. Barrett was patient and gentle with her, making sure she was comfortable, and when they finally came together it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, too content to move. Olivia rested her head on Barrett's chest, listening to his heartbeat slow to its normal rhythm. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" His hand was stroking through her hair in a soothing rhythm. "For finding me, for saving my home, for loving me, for all of it." "I should be thanking you," Barrett said. "You gave me something I did not even know I was missing. A home, a purpose, a future. You gave me everything, Olivia." She tilted her head to kiss his jaw. "We gave each other everything. That is what partnership means, right?" "Right," he agreed with a smile. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, and when Olivia woke in the morning to find Barrett still beside her, she felt a surge of joy so strong it almost hurt. This was real. He was hers and she was his, and they had a whole life ahead of them to build together. The months after the wedding were busy and productive. Barrett continued to improve the homestead, and now that they were married, he put even more effort into making it a true home. He built new furniture for the house, including a larger bed for them to share. He expanded the chicken coop and bought more laying hens. The 3 cows he had purchased earlier calved in the spring, giving them 6 animals in total. Olivia threw herself into managing the household and the small but growing farm operation. She planted a larger garden that spring, and with the repaired well pump providing adequate water, her vegetables thrived. She sold the surplus in town, using the money to buy more supplies and save for the future. She also continued to take in mending work, though now it was less out of desperation and more because she enjoyed having her own income. In the evenings, they would sit together on the porch and talk about their plans. Barrett wanted to build a proper barn, big enough to house more cattle when they could afford them. Olivia wanted to get some pigs, which she argued would be good for keeping the scraps down and providing meat. They debated the merits of different breeds and laughed at how domestic their conversations had become. "A year ago I was sleeping in a different town every week," Barrett said one evening. "Now I am arguing about whether we should get Berkshire or Duroc pigs. Is that a bad thing?" Olivia asked, suddenly uncertain. "It is the best thing that has ever happened to me," Barrett said, pulling her close. "I was just marveling at how much life can change, how much better it can get when you find the right person to share it with." By summer, Olivia began to suspect she might be pregnant. Her monthly courses had stopped, and she was often nauseated in the mornings. She waited a few more weeks to be sure before telling Barrett, both excited and nervous about how he would react. She chose a quiet evening in June to tell him. They had just finished dinner and were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, as had become their ritual. Olivia took a deep breath and reached for his hand. "Barrett, I have something to tell you." He looked at her, concern flickering in his eyes. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is wonderful," she assured him. "At least, I think it is. I hope you think so too. You are worrying me a little," he admitted. "I am pregnant," Olivia said, watching his face carefully. "We are going to have a baby." For a moment, Barrett just stared at her as if he had not quite heard correctly. Then his face broke into the biggest smile she had ever seen. "A baby? We are having a baby?" "Yes, I think it will come in January, maybe early February." Barrett let out a whoop of joy that probably carried all the way to town. He picked Olivia up and spun her around, then immediately set her down with a look of panic. "I should not have done that. Are you all right? Did I hurt you?" Olivia laughed. "I am fine. I am not fragile, Barrett. Women have babies all the time. I know, but you are not just any woman. You are my wife, my wonderful, amazing wife who is giving me a child." He pulled her into a gentle hug. "I love you so much. I did not think I could love you more than I already did, but somehow I do." "I love you too," Olivia said, blinking back happy tears. "I was so hoping you would be pleased. Pleased? I am over the moon, I am." He seemed to run out of words and just held her tighter. They spent the rest of the evening talking about the baby, about names and nursery arrangements and all the preparations they would need to make. Barrett was already planning to build a cradle, and Olivia was mentally sorting through fabric scraps to make baby clothes. "Boy or girl, it does not matter to me," Barrett said. "As long as you are both healthy, that is all I care about." "I feel the same way," Olivia agreed. "Though I will admit, part of me hopes for a little boy who looks just like his father." "Or a girl who looks like her mother," Barrett countered. "Either way, we will be blessed." The pregnancy progressed normally, though Olivia found the summer heat particularly difficult to bear in her condition. Barrett was endlessly solicitous, bringing her cool water and making sure she rested in the hottest part of the day. He took over most of the heavy work, insisting she not overdo it. "I am not an invalid," Olivia protested more than once. "I know that," Barrett would reply patiently. "But you are carrying our child and I am not taking any chances. Let me take care of you." Eventually, she stopped arguing and let him fuss. It was actually rather nice, being looked after so carefully. And as her belly grew rounder and she became more uncomfortable, she was grateful for his help with tasks that had become difficult. They celebrated their first wedding anniversary in December with a quiet dinner at home. Olivia was 8 months pregnant by then, large and ungainly and feeling rather like a whale, though Barrett insisted she was beautiful. He had made her a rocking chair, carefully crafted and sanded smooth, perfect for nursing the baby. "It is the most wonderful gift," she told him through tears, though these days she cried at everything. "Thank you." "I wanted you to have something special," Barrett said. "Something that would last and that you could use with our child. Maybe with our children, plural, if we are lucky enough to have more." "I would like that," Olivia said. "A house full of children running around, making noise and causing trouble. That sounds perfect to me." The baby came on a cold night in late January of 1885, almost exactly 15 months after Barrett had first walked into Olivia's life and changed everything. Her labor started in the afternoon, and by the time the midwife arrived from town, Olivia was already well into active labor. Barrett stayed by her side through all of it, holding her hand and wiping her forehead with cool cloths. He did not flinch at her cries or her grip on his hand that was surely leaving bruises. He just murmured encouragement and told her how strong she was, how proud he was of her. "You are doing so well," he said during a particularly difficult contraction. "Just a little more, love. You can do this." "Easy for you to say," she panted. "You are not the one trying to push a whole person out of your body." He laughed despite the tension. "Fair point." The baby, when he finally arrived after hours of hard labor, was healthy and perfect. A boy, just as Olivia had hoped, with a thick shock of dark hair in his father's eyes. The midwife cleaned him up and placed him in Olivia's arms, and she looked down at her son with a sense of wonder so profound, it was almost painful. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We have been waiting so long to meet you." Barrett was at her side immediately, staring at their son with an expression of absolute awe. "He is perfect," he breathed. "Olivia, he is absolutely perfect." "He is," she agreed, "our perfect boy." They had already decided on a name if the baby was a boy. Benjamin Thomas Kane, after both of their fathers. Little Benjamin blinked up at them with unfocused eyes, and when Barrett carefully touched his tiny hand, the baby's fingers curled around his father's finger with surprising strength. "Hello, Benjamin," Barrett said softly. "I am your papa, and I promise you I will do everything in my power to give you a good life. You and your mama both." Olivia felt tears slide down her cheeks as she watched her husband with their son. Everything they had been through, all the struggle and worry and hard work, had led to this moment. To this tiny perfect person who was part of both of them, a living symbol of their love. The midwife left after making sure both mother and baby were healthy and comfortable. Barrett brought Olivia some broth and helped her get settled more comfortably in bed. Benjamin nursed for the first time, latching on with the instinct of all newborns, and Olivia marveled at the strange and wonderful sensation. When the baby finally fell asleep, Barrett took him carefully and placed him in the cradle he had built, right beside their bed. Then he climbed in next to Olivia and wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "You were amazing today," he said quietly. "So strong and brave. I have never been more in awe of anyone in my life." "I could not have done it without you," Olivia said. "Knowing you were there gave me strength." "That is what marriage is about, right? Being each other's strength when we need it." "Right." She rested her head on his shoulder, exhausted but happy. "I love you, Barrett Kane." "I love you too, Olivia Kane, more than I can ever properly say." They fell asleep like that, with their newborn son sleeping peacefully in the cradle Barrett had made with his own hands, in the house that Olivia's father had built, on the land that they were making into a true home together. The months that followed Benjamin's birth were both exhausting and joyful. Olivia had never known that such a tiny person could demand so much time and attention, but she also had never known such fierce, overwhelming love. Benjamin was a good baby overall, though he had his fussy moments like any infant. Barrett was a natural father, patient and gentle with his son, happy to walk the floor with him in the middle of the night when he would not settle. By spring, Olivia was feeling more like herself again. She resumed more of her household duties, though Barrett insisted on continuing to do the heavy work. They fell into a new rhythm, one that accommodated the needs of their growing family. "I was thinking," Barrett said one evening as they sat on the porch watching Benjamin play on a blanket at their feet. The baby was 4 months old now and had just discovered his feet, which he found endlessly fascinating. "We should think about expanding the house. Adding on another bedroom or two for when we have more children." "More children," Olivia teased. "One is not enough for you. One is perfect," Barrett said with a grin. "But I would not mind 2 or 3 more if you are willing. I always wanted a big family." "So did I," Olivia admitted. "Though let me recover a bit more before we start working on baby number 2. "Fair enough." He reached over and took her hand. "I just want you to know that I am happy, Olivia, happier than I ever thought I would be. This life we have built together, our son, this place, it is everything I dreamed of and more." "I feel the same way," she said softly. "Sometimes I still cannot believe how much has changed since that day Mr. Finch came to collect the debt. It feels like a lifetime ago. In a way it was. We were different people then." "We were," she agreed. "But I think we became the people we were meant to be when we found each other." Barrett raised her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. "I think you are right about that. The years passed with surprising speed after that." Benjamin grew from a baby into a curious toddler and then into a bright-eyed boy. When he was 2, Olivia gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Sarah Elizabeth. 2 years after that came another son, Michael James. The house, which Barrett had indeed expanded, rang with the sound of children's laughter and occasional tears. The homestead prospered under their careful management. The cattle herd grew to a respectable size, enough to provide a comfortable income. Olivia's garden expanded each year, and she became known in Johnson City for the quality of her vegetables and preserves. Barrett built the proper barn he had dreamed of, and they added pigs and more chickens. They were not wealthy by any means, but they were secure and comfortable, and that was worth more than any amount of gold. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Barrett surprised Olivia with a trip to San Antonio. It was the first time either of them had left the homestead for more than a day trip to Johnson City in years. They left the children with Mrs. Patterson, who had become a sort of surrogate grandmother to them, and spent 3 days in the city seeing the sights and enjoying each other's company without the constant demands of children and farm work. "This is wonderful," Olivia said as they strolled along the river walk. "But I find myself missing the children already." "So do I," Barrett admitted with a laugh. "When did we become such parents?" "About 10 seconds after Benjamin was born, I think." They returned home to find all 3 children well and happy, though Benjamin and Sarah immediately launched into complaints about how they had been made to go to bed on time every night. Michael, who was only 4, just climbed into his father's arms and refused to let go for a solid hour. "I think they missed us too," Barrett said dryly, trying to navigate the house with a clinging child. "Just a little," Olivia agreed with a smile. That night, after the children were finally asleep, she and Barrett lay in bed together talking quietly. These late-night conversations had become their way of staying connected despite the busy chaos of raising 3 children and running a homestead. "I have been thinking," Olivia said, "about how far we have come, about everything we have built together." "And," Barrett prompted, "and I just wanted to say thank you. For that day 10 years ago when you decided to pay my debt. For taking a chance on a struggling woman you barely knew. For giving me a life I never could have imagined." Barrett rolled onto his side to face her properly. "You know I should be thanking you, right? You gave me a purpose, a home, a family. Everything that matters to me I have because you let me into your life." "We saved each other," Olivia said simply. "That is what we did." "Yeah," Barrett agreed. "I guess we did." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and Olivia felt the same flutter in her chest that she had felt on that afternoon in the garden when he first told her he loved her. Some things, she thought, never changed. The love between them had only grown deeper and stronger over the years, weathering the challenges of life and parenthood and the endless work of keeping a homestead running. The children continued to grow. Benjamin showed an early aptitude for working with the cattle, often tagging along with Barrett when he went to check on the herd. Sarah had her mother's green thumb and spent hours helping in the garden. Michael was still young but showed signs of being the most adventurous of the 3, always finding new ways to get into trouble or explore places he should not be going. When Benjamin was 12, Barrett began teaching him the more serious aspects of ranching. How to rope, how to identify sick animals, how to make decisions about which cattle to keep and which to sell. The boy took to it naturally, and Barrett often remarked that he was going to be a better rancher than his father ever was. "He has a good teacher," Olivia would always reply. By the time Benjamin was 15, Sarah 13, and Michael 11, the homestead was fully established and prosperous. They had built a small bunkhouse for when they hired temporary help during branding season or cattle drives. The house had been expanded again to give each child their own bedroom. The barn was full of healthy livestock, and the land was productive and well maintained. Olivia, now 41 years old, looked around at everything they had built and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Her hair had started to show threads of silver, and there were lines around her eyes from years of squinting in the Texas sun. But she had never felt more beautiful or more content. Barrett, at 45, had a few more lines of his own, and his dark hair was liberally streaked with gray. But he was still strong and capable, still the man who could make her heart race with a single look. Their love had matured and deepened, becoming something solid and unshakable, the foundation upon which their entire life was built. They stood together on the porch one evening watching the sunset, a ritual they had maintained through all the years of their marriage. The children were inside doing their evening chores, and for a moment it was just the 2 of them, as it had been in the beginning. "Do you ever regret it?" Olivia asked suddenly. "Giving up your savings that day to pay my debt? You could have had your own ranch years earlier if you had kept that money." Barrett looked at her with surprise. "Regret it? Olivia, paying that debt was the best investment I ever made. It brought me you. It brought me our children and this life we have built together. How could I possibly regret any of that? I just wanted to be sure," she said. "Sometimes I think about that day and how easily things could have gone differently. If you had ridden past instead of stopping, if you had decided it was not your problem. Our entire life hinged on that one decision you made." "It did," Barrett agreed, "but I do not think I could have made any other choice. Even then, before I knew you, something told me that stopping was the right thing to do, and I am glad I listened to that instinct." "So am I," Olivia said. She leaned against him and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "So am I. Benjamin came out onto the porch, now nearly as tall as his father. "Mama, Sarah wants to know if she can use your good fabric for a dress she wants to make." "Tell her yes," Olivia said. "But to measure twice and cut once, that fabric was not cheap." "I will tell her." Benjamin started to go back inside, then paused. "You know, I hope I can find what you and Papa have someday, a partnership like yours." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "That is a wonderful thing to hope for, sweetheart, and I believe you will find it when the time is right." After Benjamin went back inside, Barrett chuckled. "He is growing up fast. Soon he will be thinking about finding a wife and starting his own family." "Not too soon, I hope," Olivia said. "Let him be young a while longer." "Fair enough." Barrett pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "But when the time comes, I hope he finds someone as wonderful as I found." "I hope all our children do," Olivia said. "I hope they all find love and happiness and build lives that fulfill them." "They will," Barrett said with confidence. "They have good examples to follow." The years continued to roll by, each one bringing its own challenges and joys. Benjamin did indeed find a wife when he was 21, a sensible young woman named Emma who came from a neighboring ranch. They married in the same church where Barrett and Olivia had exchanged their vows, and the proud parents watched their oldest son begin his own family with tears and smiles. Sarah, always independent, announced at 18 that she wanted to become a teacher. She went to San Antonio for training, though she promised to return to Johnson City to teach in the local school. Barrett and Olivia supported her dream wholeheartedly, proud of their daughter's ambition and intelligence. Michael, true to his adventurous nature, talked about wanting to see more of the country before settling down. "I will come back," he assured his parents, "but I want to have some adventures first, like Papa did with the cattle drives." "Just promise me you will be careful," Olivia said, holding her youngest child close despite the fact that he was now taller than her. "I promise, Mama," Michael said, "and I will write every week so you do not worry." Barrett and Olivia stood on the porch and watched their youngest ride away one spring morning, off to seek his fortune and adventures. Olivia cried a little, as any mother would, but she also felt proud that they had raised children who were brave enough to follow their dreams. "The house is going to feel awfully empty," she said, wiping her eyes. "It will," Barrett agreed, "but they will all come back for visits. And who knows, maybe we will have grandchildren running around before too long to fill up that empty space." He was right about the grandchildren. Within a few years, Benjamin and Emma had given them 3 grandchildren, 2 boys and a girl. Sarah returned from San Antonio with her teaching certificate and eventually married a widower with 2 children of his own, making Barrett and Olivia instant grandparents to them as well. Even Michael sent word that he had met someone during his travels and would be bringing her home to meet the family soon. Barrett and Olivia settled into their roles as grandparents with delight. The house that had been so quiet after the children left was once again filled with noise and laughter when the family gathered for holidays and Sunday dinners. They watched their children raise families of their own and felt the deep satisfaction of seeing the next generation thrive. On their 30th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered at the homestead for a celebration. There were now 10 grandchildren in total, ranging from infants to teenagers. The house could barely hold everyone, so they set up tables outside and had a feast under the Texas sky. As Olivia looked around at all the people gathered there, all the life and love that had sprung from that one act of kindness 30 years ago, she felt her heart might burst with gratitude. This was what Barrett had given her when he paid her debt. Not just a reprieve from losing her home, but a future full of possibility and love. Barrett found her during the celebration and pulled her aside for a moment of privacy. They walked to the garden, now maintained by Sarah's daughter, who had developed her grandmother's love of growing things. 30 years, Barrett said, shaking his head in wonder. It does not feel like it has been that long. And yet it feels like a lifetime, Olivia added. A very good lifetime, the best lifetime. He took both her hands in his. I have something for you, an anniversary gift. Barrett, we agreed no gifts. Having everyone here is gift enough. I know what we agreed, but I wanted to give you this anyway. He pulled out a folded piece of paper from his pocket. Do you remember the ledger at the bank, the one where Mr. Finch recorded your father's debt? Of course I remember. Why? I went to the bank last week and asked to see it, pulled some strings with the bank president, who you might remember is Benjamin's father-in-law now. Barrett unfolded the paper, and Olivia saw that it was a copy of that original ledger page. Look at what I had them add at the bottom. Olivia looked at the paper and saw the original debt listed, $372 owed by Thomas Harper. Below it, in different handwriting, was the notation of Barrett's payment. And then, in fresh ink at the very bottom, a new entry that read, Debt satisfied in full, but the dividends of love, family, and happiness continue to compound with interest every day, paid in full and then some. Barrett Kane tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks as she read and reread the words. Oh, Barrett, that debt brought us together, he said softly. It brought us all of this. He gestured back toward the house where their children and grandchildren were laughing and celebrating. I would not change a single thing about how our story began. Would you? Not a single thing, Olivia said through her tears. She threw her arms around him and held on tight. Thank you for everything, for 30 wonderful years and for many more to come. Many more to come, Barrett agreed, holding her close. I love you, Olivia Kane, today, tomorrow, and always. I love you too, she whispered. Forever. They stood there together in the garden as the sun set over their land, surrounded by the sounds of family and laughter, holding each other the way they had held each other through all the years of their marriage. The debt that had brought them together had been paid long ago, but the wealth they had built together, the riches of love and family and a life well lived, those could never be measured or counted. As the celebration continued into the evening, Barrett and Olivia rejoined their family. They sat at the head of the long table, hands clasped together, and listened to their children tell stories and watched their grandchildren play. When someone proposed a toast to the happy couple, everyone raised their glasses. To 30 years of love and partnership, Benjamin called out. May we all be so lucky as to find what our parents found in each other. To Mama and Papa, Sarah added, who taught us what true love looks like. To more years ahead, Michael finished, and to the best parents anyone could ask for. Barrett and Olivia stood and raised their glasses as well. To family, Barrett said, to love, to this good land and this good life we have been blessed to share. And to taking chances, Olivia added, looking at her husband with all the love she felt shining in her eyes. To the man who paid a debt for a stranger and changed both our lives forever. They drank together as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. The same stars that had watched over them on that first night 30 years ago when their life together truly began. The debt collector had come for her fortune that long ago day, but the cowboy had given her something far more valuable. He had given her his heart, his loyalty, his life. And in return, she had given him hers. It was a debt that could never be fully repaid, because the returns kept multiplying with every passing day, with every child and grandchild, with every sunrise they watched together from their porch, with every quiet evening spent side by side. What had begun as a business transaction had transformed into the greatest love story either of them had ever known. And in the end, that was worth more than any amount of money could ever be.